Reviewing the different candidates for state delegate, county council, county executive, senators, congressmen, governors, House delegates. We're doing a whole 9 yards. And tonight we have Mr. John Cannon. Welcome aboard.
Thanks, glad to be here.
Appreciate you coming out, John. We've got 6 different questions we'd like to go through here that are the same questions for each candidate. Nothing changes for any person except the answers, perhaps. The first question is, why are you running for state delegate?
I'm running, Joe, because I've always had a lifelong ambition for service in the community and to the public as a whole. I've been doing it all my life. More recently, I've been on the county council, going on the 4th year now. And as far as the state level is concerned, I've seen a lot of things at the state level that are concerning me where in order to balance their budget more particularly, they seem to be depending on the local jurisdictions and pulling money away from the local jurisdictions. It's a trend that I don't like, and I would like to make a difference to that effect.
Okay, and it kind of almost answered question number 2. Why should voters support you versus your opponents?
Well, I've had the experience, you're right. I've had the experience. I've dealt with state legislators, I've dealt with cabinet members. I've talked to county presidents from across the state of Maryland, as well as commissioners from across the state of Maryland. I've actually been involved in the issues. I've defended poultry, I've defended agriculture, I've defended waterman business. I've been through that gamut, I've lived it, I enjoy it, and I look forward to addressing the same concerns for the constituents of Somerset and Wycomico County on a state level.
Good deal. Under the current administration, Maryland taxpayers received the largest tax increase in history. How do you believe that the governor and the legislature should attack Maryland's current fiscal situation, and be as specific as you can?
I'll start out with the generality.
Okay.
It's the old-fashioned way, quit spending money. That's the first thing they have to do. They also need to be more business-friendly. I would encourage that we look at reducing or eliminating the 20% increase in sales tax. I think that's only hurting business. Outside of that, I would have to say more specifically, if you look at possible early retirements on the state level, there might be about 2,500 positions available for early retirement, save about $125 million. I've always been concerned about the geographical educational cost index. That's about another $125 million. What the geographical educational cost index is, or geographical cost education index, either way, right. Sorry. That's a measure whereby if you're spending if the state is funding education in Somerset and Wycomico County, and also, of course, the funding in the counties on the Western Shore, they look at the cost of living and say if they're going to give Somerset and Wycomico $1, they might give $1.20 to the Western Shore to adjust to their cost of living increases, or expensive living, excuse me. I think $1 here for education should serve the same purpose as $1 there, and it would save the state about $125 million. With the help of the local Eastern Shore delegation, we almost kept that from happening this past year, but they still funded that purpose, and I think we should look at removing it.
Cool. Okay. If elected,
I would also say too that we also know that there are regulatory agencies that where we could reduce spending by maybe eliminating or consolidating some of the regulatory agencies. The executive branch, there are probably some positions there where they could do away with. It's also been suggested that early release of geriatric prisoners don't have dollar amounts on those, but that might be one solution too. Anything creative or out of the box we can come up with to cut back on spending.
Interesting. Okay. If elected, will you support the repeal of both the sales tax increase and the so-called millionaires surtax? If so, how would you pay for it?
I would repeal both. Part of how I would pay for it is sort of is the prior question that you asked, is finding ways to make the cuts that we have to make. But I would repeal both because I think it's an encumbrance upon the business, period, to try to make this work. I was listening to national news the other day, and it took the mayor of New York, Mayor Bloomberg, actually mentioned that 2% of the wealthiest people in the state of Maryland have left because they could do that. Right.
Hello.
And that's what you're seeing. And there's the tax base right there that you're losing. And I think that's what we have to. We have to get back to the reality of what we're doing to the public and business as a whole when we begin to increase taxes and increase regulation.
Good point. Good point. Under the current administration, we've seen a great effort by the state to force Wycomico County to strip farmers of their property rights by taking away many of their development rights. Do you support this? If not, will you commit, if elected, to support legislation to get the state government out of local planning decisions and, if need be, eliminate the Maryland Department of Planning?
That's a huge question, Joe. That's an excellent question. I lived it for almost 2 years. We went through that process just as every county did in the state of Maryland about 2 years ago. It was a big issue in Wycomico County. I know as a whole, we read about it, even in Queen Anne's County, with the same problems, same challenges. You have the farming industry, specifically here on the Eastern Shore. We have the farming industry and the poultry industry. That's a big concern on their part. It's a big concern on the part of the developers. You know that the environmentalists are concerned about it. It's a broad spectrum of special interest groups that are involved, and it has to be handled delicately. From what I found, the state of Maryland wants to propose downzoning as the number one means of preserving agriculture. It would be an okay solution if they followed the end of that formula, which would mean justifiable compensation. Even in their own state manuals, they state that some type of a program has to be initiated where there's compensation. To simply say, and we studied this crazy. I talked to members of other county councils who actually rewrote their planning guidelines to implement some type of TDR programs. And after 45-minute discussions, they said, yeah, but the TDR program isn't really working. The state wants to depend on economic conditions. If you downzone, all of a sudden you will have less property to develop in the agricultural district, and that property will be worth more economically by the law of supply and demand. It makes common sense. I don't think it's equitable, though. I think there has to be another formula in play, and I think that would be transfer of development rights, TDRs. The problem there is trying to find some way of catalyst to make that work. I have some ideas. I'm not so certain they are ready to initiate on a statewide level, but I have some very solid ideas that I've been considering and discussing with the farming community that I think could be very beneficial in trying to create a catalyst for the TDR program and some type of compensation for ag preservation. Ag preservation is important. It's important for our farming industry and our poultry industry to begin with. We don't want to lose that. But as I said before, you still have to keep in mind about the individual farmers. To let you know how controversial it was, or still is, I actually sat in the living room of a very good friend of mine in the farming business, and he's an older gentleman, and told me specifically about what it was that he did not like about downzoning, his egg nest, etc. It's his life savings. His son came in the room in 10 minutes and said, John Cannon, what are you going to do to help save our farmers? When are you going to put this downzoning into effect? You had father and son, exact opposite opinions on what they wanted to do. And that's the position that I was trying to take as president of the council. I understood there were farmers who wanted downzoning, farmers who did not want it. For both were for very good reasons. And we still have not found that solution until we can find, I think, some type of compromise, which to me is a legitimate compensation.
Okay.
That was a short answer.
That was a good answer.
Okay.
Enjoyed that. Thank you, by the way. In your opinion, what are the greatest challenges facing the lower shore, and how do you believe that you can solve those problems if elected?
As I said before, the greatest challenges I think that are facing us right now, one is the economy, and we have to make sure that we eliminate taxation. And we have to, and because we can't get involved in too much over-taxation, not switching to regulation, just so that the legislators have something to do. I was told a long time ago that when it's an election season, or when there's no way in a slow economy to tax individuals, then you go to regulating. And I don't believe in either one of those. I think we need to reduce both. If we do that, we can be a more business-friendly state, which everybody knows we need to be, and at the same time grow that base so that we create more of an economic, a flourishing economy. And I think that's the best thing that you can do. More specifically on my concern as far as trying to make a difference in the state of Maryland, I'm very concerned, as I said before, about the state of Maryland balancing its budget on the local jurisdictions. They have the barrel of their, what I call the barrel of their fiscal budget aimed right at you and me on a local level. They're ripping out our highway user funds. Every time we buy a gallon of gas, it goes to the state. It goes to the state because they're supposed to administer it, send it back. The number used to be in the millions. It's down to the small hundreds of thousands. Those are monies that we need for local roads and infrastructure. We're no longer seeing it. And trust me, I lived it. We are cutting back as we've never cut back before. I feel that the economic, as a bit of a diversion, the economic downturn, to a certain degree, was called a perfect storm. And I feel there's a silver lining, because I have witnessed it firsthand that there are cuts that are being made at every level of the government that never, ever would have been made before.
That's right.
And it's so over needed, and it's refreshing.